Hi, this is David Gornoski, host of A Neighbor's Choice and Things Hidden podcast, as well as some of our other programs like Science and You with our Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Yu, and our Seed Oil Survival series that we continue to have great fun unpacking the truth of nutrition. I wanted to give you a quick little message saying we appreciate all the support that we get from our monthly contributors and our one-time donation supporters. And we'd encourage all of you to go to our website, aneighborschoice.com, click on contribute, and make a monthly pledge today, whether it's $1, $5, 15, 20, 50, whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. Just be a part of building this new media project that we've developed to empower and inform, to inspire, to kickstart a scientific renaissance, an anthropological breakthrough and reformation in the church. All these things are possible with your support right now. So make that commitment today and help us keep doing the productions that we have. Thank you. I'm here today with Jason Jones, and he is a frequent guest of A Neighbor's Choice, as well as our podcast Things Hidden, where we do deep dive in anthropology. But today we're going to be talking about something going on that I think hasn't gotten the proper coverage, the proper analysis by the myth makers and the corporate press, and that is what's going on in Hawaii. Now, Jason Jones is a man of Hawaii, and so I'll let him explain some of his relationship to that land and just let you open up. Jason, you're in Hawaii now. You're involved with the Vulnerable People Project, helping people who are in real need, and this is something that comes close to home for you in a lot of different ways because you're usually off to places in war zones, and now you're in your own home backyard, right?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, David. It was really surreal. I founded the Vulnerable People Project 21 years ago in the lead up to the Iraq War with the goal of I'd been really involved in the pro-life movement and the conservative movement since I was a 17-year-old teenager and a young infantryman. I got involved in the conservative movement, and I wanted to harness the power of the conservative movement and the pro-life movement to advocate for the religious minorities in Iraq leading up to the invasion of Iraq, and then after the invasion, which we all saw coming. And so it was 21 years ago when I received my letter in the mail when I founded my nonprofit, and it was my third date with a young woman I ended up marrying, my wife. And I was so excited, and I told her this idea that I would advocate for the most vulnerable people in the world when it was challenging. And I never thought in a million years that I would be doing this work in Hawaii. And if I did, I would have thought it was in Honolulu. I definitely worried about Honolulu being, center stage in a Pacific War, World War III. But the idea that Lahaina, of all things, the center of Hawaiian culture, the former capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii, I never imagined that I would have to do the work that I've done around the world there. And I could have never anticipated that it would have been the most devastating scene I have ever seen. I was in Iraq with the liberation of those Christian and Yazidi communities from ISIS. I was, in Ukraine just a couple weeks ago, and I'd walked through towns that had been destroyed by the Russian army, and nothing compares, and you can go see the drone footage, nothing compares to the devastation of Lahaina. It looks like something out of, it looks like Tokyo after the firebombing of Tokyo or Dresden, something like this.
I still don't understand the why it has such a vicious, like you said, devastation. I'm not an expert on fires. I don't understand, what I'm looking at when I'm seeing these things. But to say that these things that it looks worse than a war zone and all the different ones that you are referencing, I don't understand what is causing that. Is it just a vicious electrical fire is it the atmosphere? Is it the way the homes are built, the materials? Why is it so utterly devastating beyond what you've seen?
Well, there's all these conspiracy theories, and I've been on the Alex Jones show and the Steve Bannon show a couple times since this catastrophe happened, And if it wasn't for Alex Jones and Steve Bannon, I think the media would have successfully smothered this catastrophe. The numbers are way low. They're saying 115 now. We're looking up. The FBI says there's 12 to 1,500 missing people. I was told that the local community has already put together a database of 580 names that they know are missing. So we're looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dead. And to put that in perspective, Lahaina is a town of 13,000. Maui County sees about 1,100 people die a year from all causes across the entire county. So we're looking at a matter of hours. Maui County lost as many people as they will lose in a year, disproportionately children, because the public school children were sent home. And there were a lot of conspiracy theories. When I was on Alex's show early on, I said, Alex, I don't want to address this. I want to address what we know. But with the recent revelation, and it's even being reported in the Hill, that police turned people around and blockaded people in to Lahaina town, and that only those who ignored the police lived. I don't know. At this point, I guess everything is possible. The last thing I would ever believe is that Maui police officers who are Hawaiians and Kama'aina themselves, children of the land or Native Hawaiians themselves, would have done this. And, they were just obeying orders, I'm sure, but they should have disobeyed those orders. And I think that this goes back to the COVID lockdown, when our law enforcement were trained to enforce absurd regulations and laws that were actually not lawful. I was arrested in Hawaii. I think I was the first person in the United States arrested leading a COVID and an anti-lockdown protest. And of course, the week after I was arrested, the city and county sent me my bail money back, and there would be no charges. And of course, they did this because they knew they'd lose in court, and they just wanted to keep arresting people. So we had police arresting people for no reason, and it's just heartbreaking that this is happening. What at the Vulnerable People Project, we have 3 goals with all of this, which is to care for the living, to honor the dead with proper burials, and to make sure that we keep Lahaina local, that we keep Lahaina for the Kama'aina, and we keep Lahaina for the Hawaiians. And the truth is that the Hawaiians and the Kama'aina today are the same. Kama'aina, this goes back to the kingdom days of Hawaii, where you had the Native Hawaiians who were ethnically Hawaiian, but you had other citizens of the kingdom of Hawaii. You didn't have to be, it wasn't a racialist kingdom. There were Chinese and Portuguese and Germans and Scandinavians, and it was a very diverse kingdom ethnically. It had the highest literacy rate. It was the first, the palace, the Queen's Palace, had electricity before the White House. And so Kama'aina, children of the land, those are people who are ethnically not Native Hawaiian, but they're of Hawaii. And the truth is, now I have Native Hawaiian nieces and nephews, Filipino and Chinese, and because of so much intermarriage, the Kama'aina and the Kanak are one. And it's one community. And something that's true, it's not a rumor, these families that are still looking for most of their loved ones, most bodies have not been identified. Many will probably, most maybe will never be identified. It's just ash. They're still looking for their loved ones. And they're being peppered by calls all day long by land speculators trying to buy them out. And this is the disgusting nature of neoliberalism. Lahaina, the community, and I'm grateful I really get to share what's so unique and beautiful about Hawaii. Hawaii was knit together by globalism in the 19th and early 20th century. It was knit together by a culture of exploitation of vulnerable communities that were brought here from Ilocos Norte in Ilocos Sur in the Philippines. Ilocanos, Filipinos were brought here. Portuguese were brought here. Okinawans were brought here. Chinese and Japanese were brought here, and they were kept in racially segregated camps, and they worked very hard. And then eventually, I said they were all too good looking to remain racially segregated for too long, because young men saw young women and young women saw young men, and we were hopping the fences of these segregated camps and intermarrying. And so now everybody's everything, And so just as these families and these communities were, really climbing to a position of stewarding the destiny of Hawaii, we had GATT 94 that removed Hawaii from the global agriculture market. And ag was our number one industry. It's what knit us together. And then that's what brought in this rapid development, the gig economy, a massive amounts of Native Hawaiians in Kama'aina having to move away. So only about half of Hawaiians in the world live in Hawaii. So it's a sort of ethnic cleansing. It's the neoliberal ethnic cleansing that doesn't use concentration camps, but it does sweep you away from your family, and it disintegrates your culture. And the one thing a lot of Native Hawaiians have expressed to me, and Kama'aina have expressed to me, is hopefully this catastrophe will wake the people of Hawaii up, because in another 20 years, 10 years, it will all be swept away. And what we've come to know about what's beautiful about Hawaii will be gone. And at the heart of this, David, and this is for your show and your listeners, when we think of aloha, it's the gospel of Jesus Christ reflecting through the Hawaiian culture. By the mid-1850s, Hawaii was the most Christian nation on earth. And so the hospitality, the gentleness, the kindness, the strength. Hawaiians they have a dignity, they have a strength, but they have a gentleness that comes with that strength. And that's the gospel of Jesus Christ that permeated the kingdom, permeated the plantations and then it came Catholicism, the devout Filipinos that came here from Ilocos Sur and Ilocos Norte. All of this really created what we love, is the most unique and beautiful community on earth. People love Hawaii and they don't know why. And it's not the beaches. There's a lot of beaches in the world. There's a lot of palm trees all over the world. There's a lot of ocean. Most of the world's ocean.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places and beautiful climates. What is it about Hawaii that I miss? I'm here with my son working. We moved to Texas during the COVID lockdowns because I couldn't sustain my family, and I couldn't sustain my nonprofit through the brutality of the lockdowns, nor was I going to make my children stay in the house. What I miss most is I'm back on Oahu today loading planes. And I think it's a bit annoying for my son that everywhere we go, we run into somebody I know. Mm-hmm. Everywhere we go, I run into a friend.
Is that where you're from?
Yeah, I've lived here. I lived here from when I was 17 till 3 years ago.
Okay.
So
how close is that for our audience to where the fires are? Like how far?
Oh, it's far. I live on an island. I live on Oahu, the island of Oahu. But all the families and communities and friendships transcend the islands, right? There are where I lived on the west side of Oahu. We had a lot of families from Maui. We had a lot of families from Kauai. Now I went to the I moved here as a 17-year-old private, and married a local girl, a Kama'aina, had two children with her. I have Kama'aina children. I have 7 children altogether, but my oldest 2 that I had as a young teenager are Pacific Islander and me and Kama'aina, and they have family members on all the islands. So it's something. And I went to the University of Hawaii, and my college roommate was from Lahaina. I'm trying to find out if he's okay. It's very hard. It's everyone's trying to find out where everyone is and if everyone's okay. And it's a catastrophe. It's unlike anything. The only thing I can compare it to is 9/11. And if you've been watching this on the news, you're not getting that sense. But we're looking at about half of the casualties of 9/11. But then you've got to put this in perspective. Lahaina is a population of 13,000. So there's 800 to 1,400 missing people, depending on who you listen to. And I pray God it's much lower. I pray it's nothing. I pray that everyone that's missing is found. I don't know how that would possibly happen. But it's the equivalent of, imagine after 9/11, there would be 800,000 missing people that would be presumed dead. How many families in New York City that would impact? Okay, that would impact almost every family in New York City. I have friends from New York, and almost everyone you meet in New York has a 9/11 story. Well, there's no catastrophe like this in the history of the United States, where there is not a family in Maui that is not going to be touched by this. It's just impossible. So it's going to impact the culture and community of Hawaii, of Maui, especially the way the potato famine impacted Ireland. It's going to be one of those things that echoes for centuries through the culture and families and lives of the people of Maui. And I thank you for letting me just kind of rant. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with your audience like the beauty of these folks and these families. And my real hope is that this becomes the line in the sand, and that the Kama'aina and the Hawaiians take a leadership role in the destiny of their communities. That it's not for them. For the I hope there's a Native Hawaiians listening here and Kama'aina listening. It's not for you. It's you owe it to your ancestors who worked very hard to leave you something. And every generation they climbed a little higher and a little higher, and it's all being swept away by soulless BlackRock. BlackRock's the largest owner of Hawaiian Electric. Hawaiian Electric, it appears, is responsible for this fire. And there's video of the power lines falling. And then Wall Street Journal reported on Sunday that BlackRock is already in New York. Hawaiian Electric is already in New York reorganizing to, I guess, avoid liability, bankruptcy protection. And this is the problem. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say this blunt, and I'm going to start being more blunt about this in the local media as we get away from the catastrophe. Where are Hawaii's stewards? Where are the wealthy and the powerful Kama'aina? Why aren't they? The Bishop Estate is like one of the largest estates in the world, trusts in the world. Why aren't they exerting their influence for their own? It's very strange to me. It's very heartbreaking to me. So the battle is on, and we need the people of all over the country and all over the world to stand with the people of Lahaina and say, this is their home. You know, we're not all, look, I moved here when I was 17. A lot of my Hawaiian friends, they go, you're Hawaiian in the heart, because I do love Hawaii. Hawaii saved my life. It gave me my wife, my children, everything I have and love. I say I love Hawaii like I love a person. And I literally can't. I went to college here, I was serving the Army here, then went to college here, had families here, lived here, worked here for 31 years. It's a small place. And I love the state, like I love the community like it's a person. And I have friends and family all over this place. We have to fight for the people of Lahaina. This was going to be my point to you. I have my Native Hawaiian friends. They go, Jason, you're such a Hawaiian, like you're Hawaiian in the heart. I go, I wish I could say that were true, but it's not true. Like, I'm English. My grandfather was in the British Empire, was a soldier. You know, my grandmother's father. I have relatives in New Zealand, in England, the United States. You know, I'm English. We show up anywhere we feel at home. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's the way it is, right? We show up in Africa. We show up in the Falkland Islands. We show up in Polynesia, and we're like, honey, I'm home. That's a distinctly Anglo trait. But I am indebted to the community of Hawaii. And we're not all liberals. We're not all Anglo culturally. We're not all free to like be swept around the planet Earth and have no roots. I am. People have a right to their place. People have a right to the place that was their ancestors. And so many of us have just become rootless. We expect everyone else to be rootless. And the people of Lahaina have a right to their roots. The people of Lahaina have a right to their community. And they don't have the ability, though. Of course, these families the cost of living here is ridiculous. Food is unbelievable because 95% of it comes from somewhere else. This wasn't their decision. These were decisions made by people who come here three.
So the point is, a lot of these people have had these homes, and now that they're destroyed, they can't afford to rebuild, and that's where these speculators are trying to exploit. Is that what you're referencing?
100%.
Yeah,
100%. I'm going to send this to you. I don't know. Is this all on the radio, or are some people going to see this as well?
Yeah, this would be video too. So yeah,
Okay, I'm going to
audio and
send you
video.
something right now. This is a Monopoly game that I saw. Check this out. I'm going to pick up a copy of it when I get to Maui. If you can, I don't know if you can share that with people. It's called Mauiopoly.
Hmm.
I didn't buy it when I first saw it. I was stunned when I was in Lahaina the other day, or in Kahului.
Yeah,
And I'm going to buy that. I'm just curious to see how much Lahaina is worth. It's so morbid. It's so morbid.
yeah,
I want to know what Lahaina is worth in Mauiopoly.
yeah.
Oh, man. So, here's the deal. This catastrophe, the other question is, why is the media nerfing this so hard?
Yeah, that's what
This
I
is
wanted to ask you. Like Katrina, this reminds me of Katrina, but the media was just breathless about that for day after day after day, and the obvious, you can make it a political
weeks,
thing and
months,
say,
ever.
yeah, I mean, you could do the political thing and say, well, it's a Democrat in office and Democrat leadership, so they don't want to. And I mean, I guess that's the surface easy answer. Is there something else? Why are they not covering this? I mean, they're always looking for a hysteria. They're always looking for something to pull on people's heartstrings. Why are they not, stoking that? Or I mean, not that, you know what I mean? Why are they not cashing in, unfortunately, as how the media does whenever there's a tragedy, They're not talking about it. That's what I don't
No,
understand.
everything's politics now. Everything is politics now. Our media is so dishonest. I hate to encourage people to do this because I don't want to give the New York Times money. But if you can, I'm finishing up a book. It's so this summer, I got back from Ukraine in the middle of June, and I was on deadline for a book. Actually, my publisher's been very generous with me. I've blown past deadlines because of the fall of Afghanistan really slowed my role, and then the invasion of Ukraine. Work's been busy, and I've been all over the world working. But so this summer, I was really committed to finishing this book, my next book, which you will love. It's The Great Campaign to Defeat the Great Reset. Um, and I address a lot of the things that you and I have talked about, the rise of Gnosticism on the right and da-da-da. Um, uh, I was not going to read digital media. I wasn't going to read anything online, anything social media, da-da-da. So I just subscribed to Epoch Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Daily Edition, New York Times Daily Edition, and my local paper. And so I've been reading the New York Times every day now all summer. I haven't done that since the early 2000s. And we may read this story or that story from the New York Times or the Washington Post. But I think not a lot of us have been reading the New York Times every day for a long time. That's not how we read papers anymore, right? When doing this little exercise, became unbelievable how controlled the media is. The arc on the narrative with Ukraine, the absence of a single article on Hunter Biden. It's baffling. And so everything is political. And look, here is at the very least what caused this catastrophe: environmentalism and the green lobby and the banality of bureaucracy. You had power lines. Let me ask you this question. I kind of just give you a hint. How do you know you're in a neighborhood that the government, city, and county doesn't care about? How do you know? The first thing, you drive through a neighborhood and you're like, oh, the state and the city and county don't care about this neighborhood. What's the first sign? Oh, don't send your kids to this public school. How do you know where you don't want to? I mean, I would never send my kid to any public school, but how do you know in most Christian schools? But how do you know you're in a neighborhood the city and county and state do not care about?
You're saying the open power lines, yeah,
Yeah, the power lines are above ground.
yeah,
Huh. Yeah, the neighborhoods where they live, the lawyers, the doctors, the judges, the politicians, yeah, their power lines are underground. Lahaina, their power line should have been buried. But Hawaiian Electric, it's being reported, said that they didn't want to waste money on evil energy, that they wanted to take that investment that they could have used to bury those lines to throw that into green energy, which of course green energy is a lie. Electric cars are powered by coal, mostly. The batteries have rare earth elements that you need to rape the land to get those rare earth elements. And they use children, little brown children. I say that we should call them not green cars or green energy, but black and brown energy, because at the end of the day, it's brown kids going to get your rare earth elements and it's black coal. It's just a farce, and we've allowed this farce to go. David, in the early 20th, late 19th century in Germany, there was a movement to get back to early Germanic roots, pre-Christian Germanic culture, and bringing back some of these pagan rituals. It seemed very wholesome and charming. They would dance around the maypole, and they would recite this kind of like pagan poetry, and they would get back to their pre-Christian roots. Who would have known that would have drifted to becoming a secret society known as the Thule Society, and then out of the Thule Society would be formed the Nazi Party, and then the hell that would be unleashed on the planet. Well, the Green Lobby is another hell that started with little old ladies wanting to keep the rivers and lakes streams clean. Of course, no one talks about clean rivers, lakes, and streams and soil and air anymore. It's how to keep down the production of plant food. Carbon dioxide is plant food.
It's almost like devil's got a hold of a good idea and turn it into the diabolical version.
Clean. There's nothing wrong with dancing around a maypole. I want to see little old ladies with clipboards going door to door. Let's keep our rivers and lakes clean. But it's I said that we have the Trinity, the social justice Trinity of absurdity. Now it's the Trinity is complete. Conservation movement has turned into environmentalism. Environmentalism turned into the Green Lobby. The Green Lobby is obsessed on one thing, carbon dioxide. So they've turned their nemesis, people wanting a clean environment, into their greatest partner of corporate America. Then, instead of having Americans running around complaining about the Uyghur slave labor making products for Nike, or African children doing backbreaking work to mine rare earth elements, we're talking about the trans lobby. So I thought, well, the military-industrial complex needs something fake too. Well, they found it. I'm serious. I believe the UFOs are going to become the global warming and trans movement for the military-industrial complex. A made-up absurdity that you could spend endless amounts of money on and do nothing for nobody and go nowhere. It's perfect. So we have, instead of fighting for truly marginalized and vulnerable communities like the Uyghur making products for American brands, African children getting whipped and their backs broken, and the land being raped to get your green cars, rare earth elements, and instead of the Department of Defense focused on protecting us from China, they'll be focused on UFOs. So it's like UFOs.
Wait, you're saying the little 4-foot gray aliens are not vulnerable people, Jason? Come on.
Yeah, they might
be. Roswell, come on, little foot guys. You're going to pick on that little guy?
Look, if they come here and put an end to this nonsense, I'm on their team. Do they need a spy? Like, if you guys are listening, I will spy on these creatures because these human beings have lost their minds. If you stop transgender story hour, little green man, I am on your team. If you stop African children if we stop using children in Africa to get rare earth elements, I am on Team Alien. If you free the Uyghur, I am on Team Alien. Look, guys, beam me up.
But when we first started, I started interviewing back in the day when, we were talking about things like the fire of the Notre Dame Cathedral, and it's progressively gotten weirder and weirder to the point where I would not be surprised if I'm going to do an interview within my lifetime where you're sitting with a little 3-foot guy saying, this is the Vulnerable People Project here live on Ross or something.
Promise this, guys. It'll be like that Twilight Zone. Do you remember the Twilight Zone where they were going to take them to their planet and promise?
You're going to give that little guy a rosary, huh? Is that the first thing you put in his hand?
I'll evangelize that little demon. Look, here's what I think. Do you remember that Twilight Zone episode where they these family, you could go on this huge spaceship and you're gonna live happily ever after. But someone found this religious book of theirs. They were trying to translate it, and just as the spaceship was leaving with all the people going off to live with the aliens, they deciphered the language, and they discovered what the book was, their holy book. And it was a cookbook on humans.
To serve man, right? Yeah.
Was that it? To serve man?
To serve man, because they thought they were going to serve man, but they're actually going to serve man for dinner. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but listen, I'm willing to take that risk if there's any chance at all that they're going to put an end. I want to talk about climate change. That's the nonsense. Fires are down dramatically in the past 20 years. I think in 30 years, it's like 20%.
Because
But
of
yet,
lightning rods, right? For election.
well, I know, I think their fires are down. They're down, but the catastrophes are up. Human damage is up. Well, that means it's bureaucracy and mismanagement and ideology and
Is it
environment.
true? And along those lines, is it true that this Obama Foundation former guy was in charge of the water and cut off the water while the guys were trying to? That's
It's all
true.
true. Yeah.
That's a
I'm at
crime
this point
against
now.
humanity. He should be. That's a
I'm
criminal
at the point
charge right
now,
there.
like, I don't even trust myself. I just, whatever Alex Jones says is true.
So
That's it. Like,
but who's the guy that says, "Hey, let's cut off the water during a fire"? Who was that guy, or was it like an auto thing, or what's their alibi? Have
that
we
guy,
heard?
there's interviews of him saying water is sacred and water is holy. All this nice language. I remember when I was in college, I would walk past the Revolutionary Bookstore every day.
Mm-hmm.
It was this Maoist bookstore that Barack Obama's mom used to work at, of all things. And I know that because my college professor, who was a Maoist, Dr. Oliver Lee, was actually one of my faculty advisors for my thesis. Dr. Oliver Lee was actually a really good guy, just kind of messed up in the head. He was one of those good old-fashioned, forgivable leftists. His dad, his grandpa on his mom's side was a Nazi, and his grandpa on his dad's side was a general in the Nationalist Army, and he was from the Harvard class of '53, that famous class. And he was just sort of I think his whole life was kicking at his parents and his grandparents. And he became a Maoist, and he was really kind of an influential guy in Hawaii, and kind of a nerd, but charming and quirky and but he told me when, the whole Baraka thing came up and I was back visiting at the University of Hawaii, he said, I knew Barry's mom, like she used to volunteer at the Revolutionary Bookstore. But I was walking past the Revolutionary Bookstore every day, and they had this book, and the title of the book was "Every Human Life is as Valuable as a Grain of Rice." And I saw it every day, and I thought it was a dumb title. But then one day it hit me. It's not a dumb title. It's an authentic expression of how Maoism sees human beings. Every human being, and when a leftist, if you're a leftist and you hear me say, every human being is as valuable as a grain of rice, you go, oh, so profound. A grain of rice ain't all that vulnerable, okay? If I have a grain of rice and I have your grandchild, and I'm going to throw one of them, into the depth of the ocean, you would probably say, throw the rice. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in, and I'd said to the lady at the store, who, as they all do, looked like a heroin addict.
That wasn't Barry's mother, right?
What it might have been, I don't know. She was a very, she looked very sickly. I would always go in there and I'd say, when the revolution comes, I'm hanging you first. That's what I would always. I was a little radical kid, right? So they'd have all these books about how they're going to bring about Marxist revolution. I'm like, day one, I'm coming to your store. I see a revolution kick off. I'm coming to your store. It's over for you. But I said to her, that's a disgusting title. Every human being is worth a grain of rice. And I was an Ayn Rand objectivist atheist at the time, but I'm like, human beings are infinitely precious. You're comparing it to a grain of rice. And Mao took that grain of rice from 40 million people and created the largest engineered famine in the history of mankind. Rice is precious, but nothing is more precious. It's only precious insofar as it's going into a baby's mouth, a human's mouth. Same thing. This knucklehead, you guys are like, where's this guy with ADHD going? This knucklehead on Maui, there's video of him. Water is sacred and water is holy and water is precious. Yes. Why? Because it sustains life. And of the life it sustains, human life. If you were to wipe life from this planet Earth, wipe off human beings, wipe off dolphins, wipe off even the ugly animals you leftists don't care about saving, wipe them all off. No one cares. Water's nothing. Water's nothing. What makes water precious is it sustains life. No life. What's the point of water? What's the point?
Yeah, and that's a contest between mythology and Christianity right there, right? The Christian says,
you call them the myth makers. And these people are living in an unreal world that our affluence has allowed them to live in, that they're absolutely disconnected from
It
reality.
reminds me of like the old German pagans where they would, if you chop the wrong sacred tree down, you'd be ritually sacrificed. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, so that's what you're doing. You're saying water, it's okay to sacrifice human life for the sacredness of water. That's a return to the pagan view of nature, that nature is this like, the spirit that you don't want to disturb, or else you'll have the wrath poured out on you. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, I don't think though that this knucklehead would think that,
he doesn't think that in his head, but
no, but his actions, it doesn't matter. I mean, his actions, the result of this, his LARPing an absurd ideology that he does not even believe, but his actions correspond to the ideology. And I'd said in one of my interviews, it's kind of trending on TikTok. It's somebody at a restaurant I was at yesterday. Like, I've never been on TikTok in my life, but is this you? The busboy. I'm like, yeah, that's me. And I had said that this is what you get when your elected officials order their actions to ideology and not the interests of their constituents. And this man ordered his actions to ideologies, which were really the power that gave him his job. He was tap dancing. He was playing off the sheet of music that he was given. This is the banality of evil that Hannah Arendt was talking about. These, in her report on the trial with Eichmann, these people are not evil people. They're not monsters. You would like them. You would sit down. They would be more charming than you and me. Why? Because people who perfectly correspond to the ideologies of the spirit of the age are much more pleasant. Nothing they say will ever sound like fingernails across a chalkboard. Those of us, for whatever reason, we lack the ability to conform to the spirit of the age. Probably a lot of what we say sounds like fingernails across the chalkboard to people. So these people, I'm sure, are very pleasant. They're very charming. They don't have a malicious bone in their body. They're very pious to the gods of the city. And that's where you pity them. I believe that they really feel that by being pious to the gods of the city and their high priests in government, that this makes them good. Those police officers who block the roads, would you want to be in their shoes right now? These are not bad men and women. These are people who trusted their bosses, that could not think for themselves.
That whole just following orders thing is the death knell of humanity, isn't it? I mean, is it mimetically possible to get past it, really? When push comes to shove, yes, whether it's a COVID lockdown, whether it's a Hawaiian fire, whether it's whatever, do we always have to be under the thumb of the just following orders human tendency?
Yeah, no, there is. Rene Girard said it. There's only one thing more powerful than the spirit of the age. What is it? Here's your Rene Girard test. What is it?
The Holy
Do you know
Spirit.
What it is, David Gornoski? What is it?
I'd say the Holy Spirit, the defender. Right?
That's it. It's it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get mad at people because we are not resisting the spirit of the age because of any virtue in us, right? It's only a grace from the Holy Spirit. That's it. Someone was telling me about Sophie Scholl and the White Rose resistance against the Nazis. And as they were being beaten and captured and walking off to their death, they hugged. And it was made up of Christians, Catholics and Protestants, Jews, Marxists. But they were this resistance. And whoever you are, if you're resisting this mimetic contagion, it's just grace. And, Sophie Scholl hugged her friends and she said, I'll see you in a few minutes, before they were executed. I'll see you in a few minutes. That wasn't Sophie Scholl's virtue. That's grace. Franz Jägerstätter, the great Austrian farmer, who was kind of a playboy, man. He wasn't like this great Christian man in his youth, and he married this woman and had some daughters. He just would never sign the Hitler loyalty oath. They begged him. His bishop begged him. Everyone begged him. He said, I can't do it. I just can't do it. The Holy Spirit, it was the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit would not allow him to sign that oath. And so when we see people that are swept away by the spirit of the age, it's just a mystery. Now, we're humans. We're going to get mad, or not. Like, when I got famously handcuffed and was on the cover of Drudge Report and most newspapers across the country during that first COVID protest, It was my former student that I had taught Christology and ethics to 20 years earlier. Can you believe that, such a thing? Not even 20 years. At the time, it would have been 18 years, 17 years earlier. And he was my student. And he was told he didn't want to handcuff me, and his supervisor said handcuff him. And he looked at me, and he looked down. He couldn't look at me, and he put the handcuffs on, very loose, by the way. That to me was a really great mercy.
Did he say what is truth to you?
No, it wasn't a mercy. I could care less if he put them on tight. I was kind of a troubled youth, so I've been handcuffed quite a bit. And, they can be pretty nasty with those handcuffs. I never had handcuffs on so loose in my life. And I think that was his way of saying, Uncle, or Mr. Jason, as they would call me when I was their teacher, I'm sorry, So I took that as an apology. But
can you imagine? I mean, what we need is Holy Spirit power, not to judge him, but can you imagine the news if he had handcuffed himself to you in solidarity with you? You'd be on Time Magazine, or not? No, you wouldn't be, but you would.
I don't know if you saw the footage. It's on band.com. YouTube sent it to the other world. I don't know why me being arrested would be deleted from YouTube. You'd think that they would front shelve that, but there must have been something about me being handcuffed in the words I was saying. And I said that history will judge you. I said, thank you for giving me the privilege of looking heroic, even though I'm not. And I was saying the names of all the officers and saying they're bringing shame to their families forever. And I'd asked the police officers to put down their badges and their guns and walk away. Of course, they didn't.
Can you imagine what would happen if that happened? That would create a mimetic contagion for generations, right? For other police people to watch that video. That's I want to show you. That's how easy it is. In some way, easy. It's very hard, but that's how simple it is to reverse mimetic contagions. Because if you had seen that, like if that had happened, if you had succeeded in getting them to mimetically drop it and then stand in solidarity with you, and that was videotaped on all the news.
How about
then others would do that too, years down the road, right?
And how about this? If they would have done that, would the police have followed orders to block roads in Lahaina, trapping families inside?
Probably not. Or at least there'd be somebody more likely to disobey.
I think there would have been a culture of no. And so this is the mystical body of Christ in the world. The reality is, for those of you who aren't Christian, ask yourself, if you erased this mystical body of Christ, of Christians resisting the enthusiasms of the age, the spirit of the age, or as Rene Girard would say, the mimetic contagion, where we're like, just what is everyone else doing? What do they expect of me? I'll do that. Only Christians are like, nah, I'm not doing that. And not just Christians, people like Falun Gong, and I've seen this in Iraq, and we saw this in Rwanda. People who are orientated to a transcendent truth. But it's mostly Christians. And when you see massive amounts of communities doing this, it's uniquely Christian. But it's grace. I think it's always grace. Except for maybe in my case, I think I'm just maladjusted and hate bully maybe. I just hate bullies, and but yeah, I think it's grace. And now we look at what's happening. I want to go back to Lahaina. I think for those of you watching and listening, you love Hawaii. At the Vulnerable People Project, we say we serve the most vulnerable people in the world, and the world is left. So we're operating across Afghanistan, serving those Afghan allies who were abandoned by the Biden administration. And now we have what I always say, vulnerable people are not weak people. They're strong people placed in impossible situations, but we stand with them. The impossible becomes possible. Do you think a community of 13,000 people have lost almost 1/10 of their community is going to have the ability to stand up against global finance that's coming to sweep away their land without us? Do you think that's possible? No. So the people, we all need to stand with them. If your honeymoon was in Lahaina, if you've dreamed about going to Lahaina, if Hawaii's been a place you've always felt an affinity to, and the community and cultures of the peoples of Hawaii, it's something you've always admired. Now is your chance to, in a real way, stand with them and go on Twitter. I'm not on social media. I'm not on Twitter or any of that, but do a hashtag, keep Lahaina local. This is it. We need to keep the Hawaiians and the Kama'aina in Lahaina. Very important. Very important. And they need us all to stand. And don't get upset when you see videos of people in Maui. They're upset, because there would be tourists swimming amongst dead bodies. This happened. But the problem is, and I told my friends, they weren't getting a lot of media. I said, the mainland folks, in those first days, they didn't know. The media was like, there was a brush fire and 8 people died. Could you imagine? There's a brush fire, 8 people died. That would be like saying, there was an accident in downtown Manhattan on September 11th. And then the press conference held with Sleepy Joe Biden, literally Sleepy Joe, as Trump calls him, fell asleep. Do you know this?
Yeah. So
he fell asleep. And the media's like, did he fall asleep? Was he resting his eyes? He fell asleep.
Resting his eyes. They're pathetic stenographers, aren't they? Good Lord.
Honey, I'm resting my eyes. When I was a little kid, grandma would babysit me. She'd say, honey, you don't have to go to sleep, darling. Just rest your eyes, and I'd fall right. Sleepy Joe Biden was just resting his eyes. Yes, just resting his eyes.
So how do we not? All right. So how do we not avert our gaze? How do we wrestle against the principalities in this Lahaina?
I'm going to give you one way. Go to our website we set up, hopeforhawaii.com, and make a donation. Make your best donation. If you're like, I can't make a donation, make a $1 donation. And here's why. I want you to get on the mailing list so that we can keep you up to date. Or just go to our Instagram, the Vulnerable People Project Instagram page. Because, our Instagram page, we purposely kind of try to stay out of the spotlight with a lot of the work we do around the world. And if you go to our Instagram page, it's small, but you'll see our work in Afghanistan, Ukraine, and Hawaii. And you're going to see a lot that's going on. Where we really reach out to the masses is through our email list, which is quite large. And you want to be a part of that. So our website is thegreatcampaign.org, but our Hawaii one is hopeforhawaii.com. If you make a $250 donation, let me tell you what's really sad. These are our hats. A guy that's in like an elite counterterrorism unit came up with the idea for these hats for me. It's what Delta Force and these guys wear. And he said, listen, Jason, you travel all over the world. You guys do work all over the world. So we have patches like this, East Turkestan. We just rescued 800 Christians from Khartoum when the Civil War broke out. I never thought we would have a Lahaina patch. We have Hawaii patches because we're a Hawaiian organization founded in Hawaii. But anyone who gives $250 or more at hopeforhawaii.com gets this hat. They get this patch. But instead of saying Hawaii, it says Lahaina. But just make a $1 donation if that's all you can do. I want people to stay engaged. Go on social media, follow the Hawaii accounts, follow the Maui news accounts. There's all sorts of Maui news sites that are popping up, and you're going to see the real testimony of what happened. Look around, go on Rumble, look at the footage, the drone footage, and don't believe the lie that it's 100 and some people. Yeah, I wish. I don't even like telling the truth out loud because I don't want to even say it. We're looking at probably 1,000 or so or more dead. I don't even want to say it. This idea that it's 115 now. They started out with 8, and then there were 12, and then 15. It's a joke. It's a joke. Did they say after 9/11? Did they just say there's, thousands missing? Or did they say, look, we've lost thousands of people. We're trying to identify the bodies. We haven't identified the bodies. And some of these bodies will never be identified. My organization, the Vulnerable People Project, and you'll be helping this if you go to hopeforhawaii.com. We're committing to pay for as many funerals as we can. I want to pay for all the funerals. I'm going back to the mainland on Saturday, and my goal is to raise $2.5 million in 4 weeks. And these families have nothing. They had their homes that had given to them. Hawaii has the lowest income and the highest cost of living. So we want to stand with these families and take that. Yesterday, I was getting calls from families. They couldn't even barely talk. They were crying.
How about home builders? Is there anybody that's donating, Habitat for Humanity style home building or something for people?
Right.
Is it not there yet?
Cautious.
Yeah.
I don't even do that yet because listen, Listen, yes, these grifters, developers are coming in.
Yeah.
We let Lahaina take the lead on this, and we don't need these builders coming in. There's leaked audio of how these grifters are coming in, and they've got all sorts of nefarious plans. I think the very first step, and I got a call yesterday from a young Hawaiian woman to ask me to pay for her father's funeral. She says, even though we haven't found him and we don't think we'll find him, can we do something for them, like a headstone or something? And I said, yes, whatever you need. She goes, people are bringing us T-shirts and, granola bars. I need to know how I'm going to bury my father when I find him and how to pay for that. I said, well, we've got that. By the way, I bring in granola bars and T-shirts too. So, she wasn't saying that's a bad thing. Just, what we're really thinking about is how to care and honor our loved ones. And in Hawaii, of course, in all great cultures, in our culture, what's the very founding story on human dignity? It's Antigone, right? Antigone refused Creon's decree, Sophocles' wonderful play, not to bury her brother. And she suffered death for that. And I say the best way that I can honor the living of Lahaina is to stand with them. And it is really, for me, in a way, I hate that I have to give back in this way. But I have an unlimited debt to the people of Hawaii for the beautiful life that this community's given me. And I'm grateful that, although I wish that we didn't have to do it, that I'm in a position to stand with I'm grateful that I'm in a position to stand with the people of Lahaina in this way. And you can too. It's and again, our website is hopeforhawaii.com. Anyone who does $250 or more, you get this, and you can help us honor the families of Lahaina in a way that's most important to them. In Hawaii, wherever Hawaiians have been buried, you can never build, ever. So I think also caring for the deceased can be a way to protect the living from the grifters. And that's primary importance.
But Jason Jones, I appreciate all that you've shared with us today, and Godspeed in your endeavors.
Well, God bless you, brother. Thanks for having me on.